Welcome to the Daily Horror Habit Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Krieger, bringing you daily reviews of currently streaming horror movies for your twisted pleasure. Be aware that these reviews may include mild spoilers. And as always, I hope you enjoy. I'm on record as being a fan of horror comedies that don't neglect their horror roots, as often I find horror comedies can tend to rely more on laughs than that which ties it to the horror genre. And then there's Get Duked, which loosely uses horror as the structure of its narrative, but you'll be too entertained by this non-stop, visually stimulating and hilarious romp through the woods to care. Written and directed by Ninian Doff's directorial debut, Get Duked is a horror comedy currently streaming on Prime Video, following three misfits and a homeschooled loner as they embark on a camping trip through the Scottish Highlands, though they soon learn that two mysterious figures are hunting them, and it isn't a forest ranger. The group has to put aside their sheltered and suburban ways of life to adapt to the wilds of the countryside if they wish to survive. For those wondering just how horror-centric this horror comedy is, the short answer is not very, but stick with me. The boys being hunted by crazed game wardens trying to cull them very much provides the narrative drive that keeps the boys moving towards their next gag or set piece. These wardens frequently attempt to shoot and skewer the boys if and when they catch up to them, but the antagonists themselves are essentially a non-threat. There's no real tension or terror, or the idea that these boys are in actual danger, and you know what? It totally works for this film. Doff purposefully leans towards the humor aspect of the film's premise, and it's better off for it, as Get Duked is easily one of the funniest films of the summer, as well as evoking a visual, hip-hop-centric aesthetic that is all its own. But first, let's start with getting to know the boys themselves. This trio of students are forced to embark on this school-sanctioned camping trip as a result of their less-than-stellar behavior. There's Dean, played by Rian Gordon, the dope-smoking, seemingly self-appointed patriarch of the group. There's Duncan, played by Louis Gribben, the self-appointed brains of the group, who accidentally burnt down a bathroom after trying to light his shit on fire, which he makes the point to inform the viewer that his shit wouldn't catch fire, so he doused it in gasoline. And then there's DJ Beetroot, played by Viraj Junja, a wannabe rapper who brought us fire lyrics such as "They call my dick Loch Ness because it's a giant mystery" off his hot EP, The Cocktails, who also filmed a music video in front of a burning toilet. Oh, and then there's Ian, played by Samuel Bottomley, a homeschooled boy who volunteered for the trip as it looks good on resumes for college, something that none of the other students can attest to. To no one's surprise, Ian is the odd man out who is frequently appalled by not only the core trio's behavior, but is also made the unofficial leader of the group, given he's the most prepared for what their Highland hike entails. From the opening moments of the film, Doff backs up his sense of humor with visual fidelity and crisp editing that I would compare to Hot Fuzz. No, not simply because they're both UK films, but in the way that it quickly provides exposition. Each character introduces themselves, and then the film pauses and blitzes the viewer with humorous exposition, showing us short video clips and documents that detail the character's sordid history and the reason for why they're being forced onto this trip. These intros are less than 30 seconds long per character and still entertain while informing the viewer of everything they need to know about these characters. This breakneck speed of editing heightens humor that matches the juvenile energy of our characters in a way that complements Doff's overall sense of humor. This is a stellar way to start, as the film has next to no downtime in getting to the laughs and exposing the trio's conflicting personalities to that of innocent Ian's. While Ian is all about achieving the three staples of the trip, teamwork, foraging, and orienteering, the others are more concerned with goofing off and getting high on hash that Dean bought from his brother, though Ian calmly has to explain to him that it isn't hash, but a piece of road tar. The film's overall humor effortlessly blends juvenile sensibilities with bloody dark comedy that allows for the humor to never feel one note, as well as having a nice ebb and flow to it. 1 minute, we're having Ian explain to the group that orienteering is in fact not a slur, only to cut away to the local Highlands Police Department, who are in the midst of attempting to capture the region's top criminal, a bread thief. Despite its UK origin, the humor is all very relatable on some level, without much referential humor, and more focusing on the shortcomings and fallacies of personality facades the characters put on. Given that Ninian Doff's background is in music videos, having worked with artists such as Run the Jewels and Migos, he's no stranger to visual fidelity and rip-roaring hip-hop bangers. These are the two elements that largely define the film and match his humor chops nicely. This is especially apparent when the boys begin to indulge in the Highlands' best-kept secret, magical rabbit shite, which they learn about from Game of Thrones alum James Cosmo, who plays the leader of the Highland farmers. He informs them that as rabbits love eating magic mushrooms, the psychedelic effects become supercharged, as when the magical properties gestate in rabbits' colons, their shit becomes extremely potent, chemically speaking. It's completely ridiculous and very silly, but it allows for the trippiest visuals of the film that replicate what tripping out on psychedelic rabbit shite must be like. We get characters visualizing colors, seeing body parts grow and decrease in size, as well as experiencing slow-mo. All fairly normal representations of tripping, but here's where Doff's music sensibilities truly shine. His attention to needle dropping a handful of fantastic hip-hop tracks, from the likes such as Danny Brown, Run the Jewels, and Vince Staples, pairs frighteningly well with the visual effects as characters' heads pulsate to match the track's bass drops, which creates psychedelic harmony bliss. It's not only integral to the film's overall hip-hop aesthetic, but Doff never oversaturates the film with these moments, so each time they're implemented, it feels complementary, rather than ever becoming a nuisance. Helping to alleviate the pressure of an over-reliance on trippy visuals is the absolutely breathtaking cinematography of Patrick Meller, who captures the sprawling hills and mountains of the Scottish Highlands. The sense of scope and atmosphere that these sprawling scenic shots provide is imperative to the loose horror framework that the film is built upon. The idea that you could become lost within the hills is not only very likely, but the idea that someone could be watching you from a mountaintop is even more so believable. As for the film's antagonists hunting the boys, the Duke and Duchess, played by Eddie Izzard and Georgie Glenn, they provide the classist and generational undertones of the entire film. They view themselves as enacting the will of the righteous and culling the lesser generation, who have little to no respect for their elders. These undertones are applied to the framework to give the entire film structure, but are never a great source of the film's focus, as Doff prefers to entertain rather than use the film as a soapbox. Other than one particular strong and hilarious monologue from Dean, who chastises the Duke and Duchess for their generation's perception of the youth, makes for a nice capping off point before the film's bloody dark ending that will leave you in bits guaranteed. Whether it's DJ Beetroot performing unreleased music to a shed full of shit-faced farmers, or Ian finding a group of lads he can finally call his mates, Get Duked is effortlessly entertaining from start to finish, and had me laughing the hardest I have all summer. I highly recommend this to fans of films such as Hot Fuzz, or anyone in need of a laugh. Make sure to check it out while it's streaming on Prime Video. And that'll do it for another episode of Daily Horror Habit. I'll see you guys tomorrow for another Daily Horror movie review. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Daily Horror Habit on your preferred streaming service and follow @Daily Horror Habit on Instagram and @Daily Horror Pod on Twitter.